The assassin's plasma bolt left the barrel 3 heartbeats before anyone else in the throne room noticed the weapon. Marcus Cole noticed it in one. He didn't think. His body simply moved. Years of Earth's colonial wars had burned certain reflexes into his nervous system like scar tissue. The bolt, meant for Princess Valithra's chest, found his shoulder instead, and the searing pain that followed was almost familiar. The throne room erupted into chaos. Thalassian guards, their blue-tinged skin flushing violet with alarm, surged toward the balcony where the shooter had been positioned. Nobles scattered like startled birds, their ceremonial robes trailing behind them in rivers of silver and gold. Marcus hit the polished floor hard, his blood, red, so conspicuously red against the pale marble, pooling beneath him. "Secure the princess," someone shouted in Thalassian. "Get the human away from her!" Hands grabbed at him roughly, dragging him back from where Valithra stood frozen, her large violet eyes fixed on the wound in his shoulder. He'd been assigned to her detail 3 months ago, a diplomatic gesture, they'd called it. A human bodyguard for the Thalassian heir. A symbol of the new alliance between Earth and the Ascendancy. Most of her court had viewed it as an insult. "Wait, no." Her voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. The guard stopped. Everyone stopped. When a princess of the blood spoke, even chaos listened. She descended the 3 steps from her throne with a grace that seemed impossible given the circumstances. Her silver hair, bound in the elaborate style of her station, caught the light from the crystal chandeliers above. "Release him, Your Highness." Lord Ketharan, her father's chief advisor, stepped forward. His face was a mask of barely concealed contempt. "This creature may have been complicit in. He took the shot meant for me." Valithra knelt beside Marcus, heedless of how her ceremonial gown soaked up his blood. "I saw it. I saw him move." Marcus tried to speak, but the pain was making everything hazy around the edges. The Thalassians were hardier than humans. Their physiology could shrug off plasma burns that would kill his kind. He wondered dimly if this was how he'd finally die. Not in the mud of some colonial battlefield, but on polished marble in an alien palace. "Why?" Valithra asked. Her hand hovered over his wound, not quite touching. Thalassians didn't touch casually. He'd learned that in his first week. Touch meant something to them. Something profound. Because someone had to, he managed through gritted teeth. She stared at him as if he'd spoken in a language she'd never heard. Around them, her court watched with expressions ranging from confusion to disgust. A human, bleeding on their sacred floor. A human who had placed his fragile body between their princess and death. "Get the healers," Valithra commanded. "Now, Your Highness, we cannot waste medical resources on—" "I said now, Lord Ketharan." Her voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "Or shall I inform my father that his chief advisor questioned a direct order from his heir?" Ketharan's jaw tightened, but he bowed. "As you command." As consciousness began to slip away, Marcus felt something impossible, the brush of cool fingers against his forehead. The princess's touch, feather-light and trembling. "Do not die, human," she whispered. "I have questions." Marcus woke in a bed that was too soft, in a room that was too quiet. His shoulder throbbed with a deep, bone-level ache, but it was the clean ache of healing rather than the sharp agony of fresh trauma. "You're awake." He turned his head, slowly, carefully, to find Princess Valithra seated in a chair by the window. Pale blue sunlight filtered through the crystalline panes, casting her features in an ethereal glow. She looked tired. The elaborate hairstyle was gone, replaced by a simple braid that fell over one shoulder. "How long?" he asked. His voice came out rough. 3 days. She didn't look at him. "The healers say you'll recover fully, though you'll carry the scar. Plasma wounds always leave marks on your kind." I have plenty of those already. Yes. Now she did turn, her violet eyes studying him with an intensity that made him want to look away. I had them examine you while you slept. Your body is, see, a map of violence. Marcus said nothing. There wasn't anything to say. 14 major scars, she continued. 3 old fractures that healed poorly. Burns, cuts, projectile wounds. You've been fighting since you were barely more than a child. Earth's colonies weren't peaceful places. No, Dao. She rose from the chair and moved closer, each step deliberate. The healers also found malnutrition markers in your bone. Signs of prolonged starvation during developmental years. You grew up hungry and afraid, and then you grew up to fight in wars you didn't start for people who saw you as expendable. Marcus's throat tightened. Is there a point to this, Your Highness? The point, Marcus Cole, is that I'm trying to understand you. She stopped at the edge of his bed, close enough that he could smell whatever subtle fragrance clung to her skin. Night-blooming flowers and cold mountain air. My people live for 300 years. We plan in decades, think in centuries. We don't throw our lives away on impulse. It wasn't impulse. He met her gaze, held it. Training. Instinct. Take your pick. Those are mechanisms, not motivations. She tilted her head, silver hair shifting like water. You didn't know me. You still don't. I've been told I'm cold, distant, difficult. My own court whispers that I'll make a poor empress because I refuse to play their games. Why would you die for someone like that? Who told you that? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What? Who told you you'd make a poor empress? Velithra's expression flickered, just for a moment, a crack in that perfect composure. Everyone. My father's advisors. The noble houses. Lord Ketheron has been particularly vocal about the need for my younger brother to be named heir instead. Then everyone's an idiot. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus watched her process them, watched the confusion and something else, something almost like hope, flash across her features before she locked them away again. You don't know me, she repeated, but it sounded less certain this time. I know you knelt in my blood to ask if I was okay. I know you threatened the most powerful lord in your court to get me medical care. I know you've been sitting in that chair for... He glanced at the window, at the angle of the light. Hours based on how stiff your shoulders are. How did you... I notice things. It's what keeps bodyguards alive. Velithra was quiet for a long moment. Then, impossibly, the corner of her mouth curved upward. Not quite a smile, but close. You're strange, Marcus Cole, so I've been told. I've dismissed the other guards from this corridor. She moved to the door. You should rest. When you're well enough, I'd like you to return to your duties. The court won't like that. No. She paused at the threshold, looking back at him over her shoulder. They won't. She left without another word, but Marcus noticed that she'd left behind a book on his bedside table, a Thalassian text, but with human translations painstakingly written in the margins in what could only be her own hand. A princess didn't do that for a bodyguard she merely tolerated. He picked up the book and began to read. The assassination attempt, it turned out, was only the beginning. Over the following weeks, Marcus learned that Princess Velithra had enemies, real enemies, not just court rivals jockeying for position. The Thalassian ascendancy was fracturing along old fault lines, and there were factions who believed that eliminating the tainted princess was the first step toward purifying their civilization. Tainted? Marcus had asked. Velithra's answer had been simple. I believe in the alliance with humanity. There are those who find that belief unforgivable. He also learned other things. That she took her meals alone because sitting with the court meant 3 hours of political maneuvering she found exhausting. That she read human literature in secret, fascinated by Earth's chaotic, passionate history. that she walked the palace gardens at night because it was the only time she could move without being watched and judged. He walked with her sometimes when his duties allowed. They talked about Earth, about Thalassia, about everything and nothing. She asked questions no other alien had ever asked him. What did rain feel like? What were human dreams like? Why did his people smile when they were sad? In turn, he learned to read the subtle language of her expressions, the slight widening of her eyes that meant surprise, the almost imperceptible tension in her jaw that meant she was holding back anger, the way her fingers would brush against her collar when she was nervous. He was falling. He knew it. It was foolish and impossible and against every regulation, but he was falling anyway. The night everything changed started like any other. Velithra had requested his presence at a formal dinner, a concession to the court who'd grown suspicious of their private walks. Marcus stood behind her chair, silent and watchful, while she navigated the treacherous waters of Thalassian politics. He saw the poison before anyone else did. It was in the subtle way the servant's hand trembled, the too careful placement of the wine goblet, the way the man's eyes flickered to Lord Kethoran for just a fraction of a second before he stepped back. Marcus moved. He caught the goblet before it reached her lips, and in the same motion, he drove his elbow into the servant's throat. The man went down. The goblet shattered, and the splash of wine that hit the marble floor began to smoke and sizzle, eating through stone like acid. This time, there was no chaos, just silence. Absolute, horrified silence. "That poison," whispered Lady Methval, one of the few nobles who'd ever shown Velithra any kindness, "is designed for Thalassian physiology. It would have killed her in seconds." "I know what it is." Lord Kethoran's voice was cold. "The question is how a human recognized it. I didn't recognize the poison." Marcus straightened, his hand still gripping the would-be assassin's collar. "I recognized the intent. Impossible. No human could. Enough." Velithra rose from her chair. She was pale, paler than usual, but her voice was steady. "Marcus Cole has saved my life twice now. Once could be luck. Twice is loyalty." She turned to face her court, and Marcus saw something new in her bearing. Not the careful princess playing a role, but something fiercer, something royal. "Anyone who questions his place at my side questions me. And anyone who questions me should remember that I am still my father's heir." She walked out of the dining hall without looking back. Marcus followed. He found her in the garden, standing beside a fountain that caught the light of Thalassia's 3 moons. Her shoulders were shaking. "Your Highness, don't." She held up a hand. "Just don't." He stopped. Waited. "I've known Kethoran since I was a child," she said finally. "He taught me to read. He gave me my first book of poetry. And tonight, I watched him try to hide his satisfaction when he thought I was about to die. I'm sorry." She laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "What could you possibly have to be sorry for? You've done nothing but protect me. You've given me more loyalty in 3 months than my own court has given me in 90 years. Velithra." It was the first time he'd used her name without her title. She turned, and he saw the tears tracking down her cheeks, luminescent like liquid starlight. Thalassians didn't cry often, he knew. It was considered a profound vulnerability. "Why do you keep saving me?" she asked. "Tell me the truth this time. Not training, not instinct. Why?" Marcus closed the distance between them, slowly, giving her every chance to step back, to rebuild her walls, to remember that he was just a human and she was a princess. She didn't move. "Because you're worth saving," he said quietly. "Because you're kind when you think no one's watching. Because you write translations in book margins for a bodyguard who can barely read your language. Because your people are wrong about you and someone should have told you that years ago." "Marcus, And because I'd rather die protecting you than live in a universe where I'd let something happen to you. Her hand came up to his face. That impossible touch. That profound intimacy in Thalassian culture. Her fingers were cool against his skin, trembling slightly. I should send you away, she whispered. For your own safety, for propriety, for 100 reasons. Will you? A pause. A breath. A decision. No. When she kissed him, it was tentative and unpracticed. A princess who had never allowed herself to want something she wasn't supposed to have. He responded gently, carefully, letting her set the pace. Her tears were wet against his cheeks. They stood there in the moonlight for a long time, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. This will destroy my position at court, she said. Probably. They'll try to kill us both. They'll try. She pulled back far enough to meet his eyes. You're not afraid. I've been afraid my whole life, he admitted. But not of this. Never of this. The coup came at dawn. Marcus woke to the sound of pulse rifles charging in boots in the corridor. He was on his feet before the first shot fired, grabbing Velithra and pulling her behind the heavy stone bed frame. Stay down. Marcus, what? Ketharin's making his move. Your brother must have agreed to back him. He checked the charge on his sidearm, the human weapon they'd let him keep as a diplomatic courtesy. We need to get you to your father. My father is in the Eastern Tower. That's across the entire palace. Then we go across the entire palace. What followed was the longest hour of Marcus's life. They moved through servant passages and forgotten corridors. Velithra guiding them through a palace she knew, like her own heartbeat. Twice they encountered guards loyal to Ketharin. Twice Marcus put them down before they could raise an alarm. His shoulder was bleeding again, the old wound reopened by exertion. Velithra noticed. You're hurt. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your shirt. I've bled through worse. She grabbed his arm, pulling him to a stop in a narrow stairwell. Marcus Cole, if you die because you were too stubborn to admit you needed help, then I'll die doing my job. He cupped her face with his free hand. But I don't plan on dying today. I've got too much to live for now. Her expression softened. You impossible man. You're impossible man, apparently. They reached the Eastern Tower to find it under siege, Ketharon's forces pressing against the Emperor's personal guard. But the Emperor was Thalassian, 300 years old, and battle-tested from conflicts that predated human spaceflight. His forces were holding. Father! Velithra's cry cut through the battle. Emperor Kael'thas turned, and in that moment of distraction Marcus saw the sniper on the balcony above. The same balcony. The same angle. History repeating itself. He didn't think. He just moved. The bolt caught him in the chest this time. Not the shoulder, the chest. Center mass. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. The darkness was warm and quiet. Marcus floated in it, distantly aware that he should be in pain, that he should be fighting to wake up, that something important was waiting for him. Not leaving him. Velithra's voice, fierce and raw. Daughter, he's human. Even with our best healers, then we get human healers. Earth healers. I don't care if we have to tear open a wormhole, we are not letting him die. Velithra dot. The Emperor's voice was gentler now. You love him. A pause. A breath. A decision. Yes. I love him. And I know what that means. I know what the court will say, what the laws demand, what tradition requires. I don't care. He's worth more than all of it combined. He's worth more than my throne. You would give up your birthright for a human? I would give up everything for this human. Her voice cracked. He kept saving me. Over and over. Not because it was his duty, not because he was ordered to. Because he saw something in me that no one else bothered to look for. Because when I asked him why, he said, he said someone had to. Marcus tried to speak, tried to tell her he was still there, still fighting, but the darkness was heavy, and his body wasn't responding. I think the Emperor said slowly that I may have misjudged humanity. Father? This man has saved your life 3 times now. He's asked nothing in return. No titles, no wealth, no glory. He simply protected you. Because someone had to. A long pause. That's not the action of a primitive species. That's the action of someone who understands honor better than most of my court. What are you saying? I'm saying that traditions exist to serve our people, not to chain them. And if my daughter has found someone worthy of her, truly worthy, in a way that blood and status could never measure, then perhaps it's time for new traditions. Marcus felt something touch his face. Cool fingers. Trembling. Please, Velithra whispered. Please come back to me. I'm not finished asking you questions. He fought. Through the darkness, through the warmth, through the seductive pull of oblivion. He fought like he'd been fighting his whole life, but this time, for the first time, he was fighting towards something instead of against it. His eyes opened. Velithra's face was the first thing he saw. Tear-streaked and exhausted, and more beautiful than any alien had a right to be. Hey, he managed. She made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Hey yourself, did we win? Kethoran is in chains. My brother has been exiled. My father? She glanced over her shoulder at the Emperor, who was watching them with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. My father has decided to revise several ancient laws regarding interspecies unions. Marcus blinked. What? She means, the Emperor said dryly, that you've accidentally started a political revolution, human. I hope you're prepared for the consequences. I wasn't trying to, I know. The Emperor moved to stand beside his daughter, looking down at Marcus with something approaching respect. That's rather the point. The most profound changes in history have always come from people who weren't trying to change anything. They were simply trying to protect what they loved. Velithra took Marcus's hand. In Thalassian culture, he knew that was as significant as a marriage vow. I'm not royalty, he said. I'm nobody. A soldier from a backwater colony. I don't have titles or blood or anything your people value. My people, Velithra said firmly, are going to have to learn to value different things. She lifted his hand to her lips and pressed a kiss to his knuckles. Starting with loyalty, courage, the willingness to take a bullet for someone you barely know because someone had to. I knew you, he corrected quietly. Maybe not the details, but I knew the important parts. And what were those? That you were alone. That you were afraid. That you deserved someone who would stand between you and anything that tried to hurt you. He squeezed her hand. I've been looking for something worth protecting my whole life. I just didn't know it would have violet eyes and silver hair. Velithra smiled, a real smile, the kind that transformed her whole face from regal beauty to something warmer, more human. You're going to be a terrible diplomat, she said. Probably. The court is going to hate you. They already do. And I'm going to spend the rest of my very long life trying to understand you. Marcus reached up to touch her face, marveling at how natural it felt now. This intimacy that had once seemed impossible. I've got time, he said. All the time in the world. Outside the tower windows, Thalassia's 3 moons were setting, and the first light of a new day was breaking over the horizon. Somewhere in the palace, the old order was crumbling. Somewhere in the galaxy, humanity's place was shifting. But in this room, none of that mattered. There was only a princess who had finally found someone worth trusting, and a soldier who had finally found something worth living for, and a universe that would never be quite the same.